Good evening and welcome to the 2022 Shakopee Mayor Candidate Forum, sponsored by the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau. Tonight we're gathered at River Valley Church. My name is Michael Clem. I'm an attorney at Helmuth & Johnson and a member of the Chamber. Tonight I will serve as the moderator. All candidates for Shakopee Mayor were invited to participate. With us this evening are Matt Lehman and Mayor Bill Mars. Candidates are arranged in alphabetical order. The candidates have already recorded video interviews to introduce themselves to the community, and you can see those online, so the candidates will not make opening statements this evening. I encourage you to watch the videos. Tonight, candidates will be asked a series of questions. They will have 60 seconds to respond to each question. They will also have 4 opportunities to make rebuttal comments for 30 seconds. And Heather, would you please bring up 4 rebuttal cards for each candidate? My apologies, I accidentally put those rebuttal cards away thinking that we were moving to the larger group next. Thank you. Mr. Lehman, the first question will be directed to you. Why are you running for mayor?
Why am I running for mayor? Well, the seat wasn't open 2 years ago when I ran for city council, so here it is this time of year. The reason I'm running for city council is I'd like to take the 20 years of experience that I have and have some conversations with not only our government, but all layers of government of how they can lower the cost to the citizens that they serve. 2 years ago, I raised this issue as my top priority due to the COVID pandemic spending, knowing that that kind of spending is going to cause ripple effects moving forward. It was kind of ignored, so here we are. We're seeing the ripple effects of the inflation squeezing our constituents and the high interest rates, making it harder to carry any debt or buy a home. So I'm here running for mayor to put a little common sense and have these conversations, hopefully to better serve the citizens. Thank you.
And Mayor Mars, why are you running for re-election to mayor?
Well, thank you. I'm running for mayor, as I have the last 2 cycles, to continue to grow and make Shakopee a dynamic place to live, work, raise a family. Shakopee has a lot going on for it. We've done some great work over the last 7 years, and we're going to continue that to move forward here. My opponent has run for mayor a couple times in the past, always running from a position of safety. I stand here and I'm your mayor, and I look forward to continuing to be mayor to move Shakopee forward in a positive way.
Mr. Mars, or Mayor Mars, how is the role of mayor different from the role of other city council members?
Well, I think that, I am just one of 5 members, and I have 1 equal vote as other councilors. However, being mayor is you're leading the way. You're the face of the community, trying to be a positive driving force for our community, whether that's up at the Capitol, with the League of Minnesota Cities, or even locally, going out, being in front of the public at the events. I try to attend as many events as I can. I do have a full-time job, so I am limited on some, but I think it's important that it's the positive face of Shakopee, and I have been that person, and I hope to continue to be that person.
Mr. Lehman, how is the role of mayor different from the role of other city council members?
Well, I think Mr. Mars explained it fairly well. The mayor also runs the meetings, which Mr. Mars does a decent job at running the meetings. So I can't disagree with what he said on the role of the mayor. The only thing I would add is that we are elected to represent our immediate constituents' concerns first. Over the last 2 years, I think we can do a better job at that. So that would be my response.
Mr. Lehman, what makes an effective mayor?
What makes an effective mayor? An effective mayor is one that's going to try to build consensus when you have very divisive issues. Instead of just going with the majority, you try to, and I'm going to plug past Mayor Brecky for this. You try to take the items within the issue that everybody agrees on, pull them out, set them aside, see if you can work out the items that you don't agree on, and if you can't, then you can go back and pass what everybody does agree on. That's consensus building and seeking compromise.
Mayor Mars, what makes an effective mayor?
Well, I think being a strong advocate for the city, also one thing that I take a lot of pride in, I'm a relationship builder. I build relationships across the spectrum with other organizations, with residents, maybe that I don't see eye to eye. I think Mr. Lehman brought up consensus, and we do talk about issues. I go up and down the line as the official of the running the meetings, and we ask for your opinions on specific issues. We try to build consensus, and I think we have done a good job. I guess depending on what side of the equation you're on, we have had a lot of 4-to-1 consensus. That is consensus. Is it majority? No. Is it consensus? Absolutely. Are all voices heard? I believe they are. That's moving forward in a positive way.
Mayor Mars, during your time serving on city council, whether as a council member or mayor, what has it been its greatest accomplishments in your eyes?
I think personally for me, I grew up in a family of community servants. It was very important to our family, my parents, my uncle. They all gave more to their community than they took out. And I've been doing this for a long time in our community. My accomplishments really is serving. We could go in this project or that project or that. I think my biggest accomplishment personally is the ability to serve our community in a positive way, and I think I've done that for a long time. Thank you.
And Mr. Lehman, during your time serving on city council, what do you see as its greatest accomplishments?
Well, that's 20 years worth of time, so there's a lot. The biggest one, I guess, there's a couple that tie, but I think one that I'm very proud of is trying to get all of the city services into one campus location. So what we did is we built a public works building, a police building, and now a city hall. We have engineering and storage across the street. And at the time, that was a while back, we did that all without a tax increase, by the way. And it's all for core services, and it's all built for the future additional space to add into as we grow. What makes that a great accomplishment is that you no longer have to run all over the community to try to get a project done. So that's a pretty substantial accomplishment that I was directly involved in over many years.
Mr. Lehman, during your time serving on council, these 20 years, what has been the biggest challenge and how was that addressed?
Well, the biggest challenge, as we're seeing in both our nation state and anywhere else, is you have differing opinions on important topics, and trying to build a middle point sometimes is pretty difficult when you have both sides entrenched on differences, be it ideology or whatever. So that's always been the biggest challenge. I suspect it will continue to be. Unlike the state and federal level, I'm not impressed by people attacking others directly and personally for policy differences. I believe a policy difference between myself or anybody else is nothing more than two individuals or multiple individuals having a different policy position because their priorities are different orders, and that doesn't mean their priorities aren't important. They're just in different orders, okay?
Mayor Mars, during your time on city council, what was the greatest challenge and how did you address it?
I think that it is hearing, I think it's important in today's world to listen to all views, right? and we're not always going to see eye to eye. But being able to listen, understand, attempting to relate, and trying to find common ground where you can come together. I know that I've had some opposition in my time here serving our community, and I've actually, several of those folks I've invited right over to my kitchen table and saying, we're working on a project, you're opposed, but why don't you come together and why don't we take your ideas and try to mold and make the project better for all of our community. But it's a big challenge of trying to talk with people, either inform or more educate and listen carefully.
Mayor Mars, based on your experience serving as mayor during the COVID-19 pandemic, what strategies are important for leading during a crisis?
Well, I think good communication during any crisis, centralized communication is vitally, because you can't have 4, 5, 6 different people speaking in all different directions. Unified communication. COVID was very difficult, right? It was hard on city government. It was hard on businesses. It was extremely hard on families and how they do that. I think to try to stay together in a positive way that we would see this all through. Certainly there were challenges, but now that we look at the COVID in the rearview mirror and trying to move forward, is that we came together and worked together for the most part to drive forward to be here today. And unfortunately, some of us, have had losses in that aspect. But I think that was the crisis management's all about communication.
Mr. Lehman, based on your experience serving on city council during this COVID-19 pandemic, what strategies are important for leading during a crisis?
Well, I don't think anybody would deny that the flexibility needed was probably the one item that was most important. Throughout the process, everything kept changing. So you constantly had to be flexible and adapt and change along with it, whether it was businesses that were allowed to have 50%, now they're not allowed to have any, now they can have this, they can't do that, or whether it was us, we can do this, we can't do that. It was constantly changing, and as administration told us over and over, flexibility is key to work through this, and it turned out to be 100% accurate. So I think flexibility was key.
Mr. Lehman, what is the most important issue facing Shakopee right now?
Well, for me, the number one issue is the same number one issue I had in 2020, when I ran for council. And it's, I just have to say, it's not that it's a safe time to run for mayor. I couldn't run 2 years ago because the seat wasn't up. I don't control that. The number one issue for me is, as I said in 2020, is you can't spend this kind of money that the federal government and the state government spent on the COVID pandemic and not have future repercussions. And now we are at that point where we're seeing these repercussions of extremely high interest rates, hurting people from buying houses or carrying debt, whether it's a business payroll, whatever, and high inflation, which is killing everybody across the board. And it looks like it's only going to get worse, and they're telegraphing that it's probably going to be around for a couple of years. So that's my number one issue. I think a strong community requires a strong base of your constituents. And I'm out of time.
Mayor Mars, what is the most important issue facing Shakopee right now?
Well, thank you. I think when you use the word issue, I look and turn that around and say opportunity. Unlike my opponent, the sky is not falling. I don't know how long of a memory you have, but we have some inflation today. That's nothing compared to what we had in the late 70s, mid 70s, or interest rates that were 18%. I think the issue, the opportunity, I call it an opportunity in front of us, is to continue to grow our community, to help our community grow and prosper and thrive as we have. That's what I think the issue is moving forward.
Mayor Mars, are there any areas in which you believe the city should increase spending?
Increase?
Increase.
I'm, basically pretty conservative. I think we've held the line on spending. We talk about the tax levy. We've added $2.9 billion worth of market value to the city of Shakopee in the last 7 years. That helps be able to split the pie smaller and smaller for all of us. Are we seeing some increases? Absolutely. But you're seeing your house go up. Over the last 7 years, 10 years, gone up a lot. I think your home value has gone up faster, way faster than your tax level. I look at our comparable cities, and out of 12 of them, the average tax levy is 8.39, and we're going to stand at 6.25, which is below inflation, and I think sets our town up for future success.
Mr. Lehman, are there any areas where you believe the city should increase spending?
No, but I think we actually could substantially reduce the cost of the taxpayers on the growth side. I don't believe the Shakopee taxpayers or our constituents should be paying for that growth. And they are when it's a TIF district. We're paying for all the TIF districts because the money generated from the TIF district goes back into the project. None goes into the general fund to pay for the services, yet we are now providing all them city services to these districts. Police, fire, street sweepers, sewer cleaners, all these types of things. So we, in effect, are actually subsidizing new growth. And I don't believe that's the role of existing taxpayers.
Mr. Lehman, are there any areas where you believe the city should reduce spending?
I just gave you one. I don't believe the current taxpayers should be paying for future growth. I don't think we should be extending services into annexed areas, hoping that growth comes. I think growth is probably going to slow down since the cost is substantially higher with the higher carrying cost of the interest. We know the supply chains are a mess, probably going to get worse. So, it's not a matter of the sky falling. It's a matter of these are just facts. I can't help the facts are what they are. But we could actually lower some of our costs. And that doesn't mean city services right away, basic core functions. I'm not in favor of cutting that. But there are other ways we could actually lower our costs. There's some of these areas that have very big venues. I'd like to see us be able to collect for the services providing for them venues, and maybe a ticket fee or something like that. Maybe it takes special legislation. I'd be willing to pursue that. And there's a lot of other ways that we could actually lower the cost to our taxpayers.
Mayor Mars, are there any areas where you believe the city should reduce spending?
Well, I think with a city municipality, I think what is the number one cost of a city municipality is wages, right? And we try to hold the line there, but of course we're seeing wage inflation in businesses as well. But we also want to retain people, and I think that's vitally important moving forward. Everybody, whether it's government or private sectors, can't find enough people. I think that the driving force of spending in government is really 60% of it is public safety, which includes police and fire and wages. And that's actually one of our, public safety is one of our core responsibilities, right? And I think Shakopee actually runs pretty thin on that over the years and does a pretty well job. We have a very, very safe community, and our public works does a great job maintaining our streets and parks.
Mayor Mars, what are your long-term goals regarding business and economic development in Shakopee?
Well, I think economic development is vital to our community as anything else. Councilor Lehman brought up the TIF, and he talks about he doesn't like the TIF because it doesn't pay for services. Well, he voted for the RAR TIF a couple years ago, $60+ million worth of expansion, a couple extra jobs actually, written up in the paper the other day. That company's 175 years old. RAR had already a base business that was already paying taxes. And actually, they've done so well that RAR paid their TIF off early and are now a regular taxpayer like the rest of us. So economic development has been a big driver in the last, like I said, 7 years. $2.9 billion worth of market value in Shakopee. That makes the pie smaller for all of us. And I think we need to continue to do that and be prepared for the next round of growth in our community.
Mr. Lehman, I see you'd like to make a rebuttal.
Yeah, I'd just like to add something wasn't able to because lady said I was out of time. But Mr. Mars is correct. I did support RAR. I did support some other ones also. I do support tax incentives for jobs, good paying jobs, jobs that pay a wage that the workers at them jobs aren't eligible for other taxpayer subsidies because they make too much money. And I absolutely support that because I think them jobs are great for our community. They give our constituents an opportunity to move up the economic ladder, so to speak, and that's really what we're all trying to do. So just wanted to clarify that.
Mr. Lehman, what are your long-term goals regarding business and economic development here in Shakopee?
Well, yeah, I tend to think all of our businesses are important, no matter where the location is, not just our downtown, but all of our businesses are important. I shouldn't say we because it's not us, but government in general is making it very difficult for business. We need to do what we can for our businesses because the local economy is very important. I do support tax incentives for high-paying jobs. I do support projects that we currently are doing for some of our businesses, mainly our downtown. Rhythm on Rails, great things. Some of these community events are wonderful for the community, and they help bring people down to our businesses. But we really need to watch some of our regulations. A lot of them are state-controlled. We can lobby. But we really need to watch some of our regulations and stuff like that to make sure that we need to always tell our constituents and our community, please shop local. Please buy and shop at our local businesses, their products and services, because it's critical, absolutely critical.
Mr. Lehman, please tell us more about your opinion on tax increment financing and when it should be used or when it should not be used.
Well, like I said, I support it for a business that wants to come here or expand. If we have a local business that wants to expand their business and add jobs, and the jobs pay a wage that, and now looking at the school referendum, we should probably put in our TIF business subsidy policy that the wages have to be adjusted for inflation like the referendum was. Otherwise, we give a tax incentive, the taxpayers pay for the services to provide for that business, and now 2 or 3 years later, the wages that are being paid are actually less than, and they're eligible for other taxpayer assistance. We certainly don't want to pay to pay. We want to pay to benefit.
Mayor Mars, what is your opinion of tax increment financing and when should it be used or when should it not be used?
Well, I think that Shakopee has actually been very conservative in the use of TIF compared to other communities. I think we've used it smartly, and I think we've done it correctly. We just brought up a RAR, very great success story too, right? But take Canterbury, which was a big issue 4 years ago on this stage, and Canterbury was advertised as a $400 million redevelopment project, offering TIF to get the city infrastructure in the action. I stand here today, 4 years later, and actually the TIF projections for Canterbury are already at $250 million. And once we get the amphitheater completed, they will pay off way earlier for that example. So I think it's important to our community. We did our downtown, our 2 apartments, Shakopee Flats, Deco, Vitality to downtown, 2 new restaurants. Great use of those tools.
Mayor Mars, are any changes needed in local law enforcement?
Any changes?
Yes.
You know, I want to speak to our crime rate in our community. I believe for the last 12 years, the chart is almost straight down. 2022, if the trends continue for a couple more months, we'll have the lowest crime rate in Shakopee's history. We have a tremendous law enforcement team here. We just don't take them out of the box. We do some extra steps. We want the right people. And I think in Shakopee we have a very safe community, and we take a lot of pride in that. A lot of it is has to do with our police force being out in the community and actually talking to people, right? We heard one of the earlier debaters talk about, in a school district, talk about building relationships and connecting. Our local police department does that every single day, and we should be thankful for that. And we live in a very safe community.
Mr. Lehman, are any changes needed in local law enforcement?
Well, I echo a lot of what Mr. Mars says. We do have a very, very good Shakopee Police Department. I supported the school resource, excuse me, school resource officers the whole time that I've been on council. Excuse me. Changes that I'd like to see, very minor. I've been very active for many years in crime prevention. So the change that I'd like to see is we've always talked about being the eyes and ears for the police. Very important. But now we're to a point to where we could actually help more by being the eyes, ears, and evidence gatherers for the police. So I'd like to add the E for the evidence on the third layer of that. So, but that's going to take the crime prevention area of our police department to work with our community, like they do through Neighborhood Watch and these other functions, to show exactly what it is they need, how to gather it in a safety manner, so that criminals can be prosecuted. We saw it in our parks, getting all this vandalism and stuff. It's hard to catch them with the evidence to prosecute.
Mr. Lehman, what is the most significant transportation issue for our community, and how should that be addressed?
Well, I would be in trouble if I didn't say river crossing capacity on 169 at peak times, but there's others, and we've been working on them. We've been actually pretty successful on some of the transportation initiatives on 169, 101 Bridge, up through Chanhassen, the roundabout. My idea on a napkin, and they kind of changed a little bit with the engineers. But so we've been very successful. There's a lot of work to do as we grow out. Obviously, changes to the busing lines, that happens too. One of the big changes that would help would be the third lane on 169 from Marshall Road up over the river. There's a study we're working on, possibly a min pass during peaks, open to everybody. Off peak, and then bus lane on the shoulder. That's project in the works.
Mayor Mars, what are the most significant transportation issues for our community, and how should they be addressed?
Well, I don't know if we really have some issues. I think our local transportation and the commuter, I think you can get around our community pretty well with the bus company. Probably the most significant thing, and probably related to COVID, are our park and rides and the express services to downtown Minneapolis and et cetera. My wife was a commuter for over 20 years and would use the park and rides. And now after COVID, you're just seeing less because folks aren't going back to the office. Again, the COVID changed a lot of things. There were some negative stuff, but actually you look at the positives that come out of it. The technology, the ability to work at home. I'm working from home 3 years, corporate America Target. Not that I'm a big fan of working at home because I've got to vacuum, I've got to do the dishes, scrub the floor, but transportation, I believe, is pretty good here in our community.
I can let you use my computer if you want to do the vacuuming, the dishes and stuff.
Mayor Mars, what are your goals and strategies regarding housing in Shakopee?
Well, let's talk housing a little bit. My opponent talks about hyper growth over the last many years. Our growth that we've seen in our community, nothing like the 90s when 169 or the 2000s. So to give you some ideas, in 2017, we had 33 single-family starts. In 2022, which is still going on, we had 180. In 7 years, we've had 750 single-family starts. Back in the late 90s, I think we were doing 750 a year. Yes, we have added some apartments that have added vitality to our community. We have added 8 apartments for about 1,700 units for multifamily. And let's not forget that our We have added affordable housing. We've added 265 units of affordable housing in our community. And I think the marketplace will switch back and forth.
Mr. Lehman, what are your goals and strategies regarding housing in Shakopee?
Well, the one thing that's always bothered me a little bit is you can buy a 700-800 square foot, not buy, rent, a 700-800 square foot studio apartment in Shakopee, which was subsidized by the taxpayers to build and now with the services. But you can't, as a person, buy a lot with your own money and build a 800 square foot retirement home. Our zoning doesn't allow it. Scott County took the same position a few years back, and I think we need to relook at that. There's retirees that would like to do that themselves. There's starting couples that would like to do that themselves, that would add something into it. We know that government has been working on affordable housing for decades, and the housing costs just keep going up. So they're not being successful, and we have to find other alternatives that, A, doesn't cost taxpayers and are so simple and free as a zoning change.
Mr. Lehman, the 2040 comprehensive plan titled Envision Shakopee was adopted in November 2019, according to the city website, shortly before the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Do you anticipate any lasting impacts from the pandemic that will affect the future of Shakopee?
Well, I don't think it will well, it's hard to say. I think it's a little early to decide that. I think Mr. Mars made a point that there's a lot of changes in the workforce. So from that standpoint, it might have an impact on office park uses, business park uses, things like that. It's hard to say. A lot of these are manufacturing and office combined, so you really can't manufacture from your living room. I don't think it's going to have a big impact on the comprehensive land use plan per se, but I could be wrong.
Mayor Mars, the same question. The 2040 comprehensive plan Envision Shakopee was adopted in November 2019 before the start of the pandemic. Do you anticipate any lasting impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic that will affect the future of Shakopee?
Well, the comp plan of 2040 was a pretty bold plan. I think we had, 12 big ideas. And even though my opponent voted against that comp plan, I think our momentum for our comp plan is continuing. What about our small town feel? That was a big item, right? Well, we've added more vitality to our downtown that in the last 7 years than we have in the last 30. I think growing our community in a diverse, inclusive way that has balance, because we're seeing housing of all types. I think my opponent brought up the rent. Sure, rent's expensive. So is a house. We have not in 7 years had a developer come forward and say, I want to build affordable housing on small lots. Here's my plan. Can you consider it? We haven't even had anybody at the table. I think it could be considered in our community if a developer came forward with that. But I think our comp plan is big and bold, and it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's going to take time.
Mayor Mars, what is your own vision for Shakopee's future?
I think a town that is, as I said before, inclusive, diverse. We have a little over 44,000 people in our community. 36% of that is non-white. We have to embrace that more. We already done a great job. We need to embrace it some more and learn together. I think that's really important moving forward for our community. The big picture of 44,000 people, 24,000 jobs in our community. I think it's vitally that we continue to grow our job base so we can stay here in our community, safe, sound, secure, and you can live here, work here, and play here. I think that's very important for our community in the future.
Mr. Lehman, what is your vision for Shakopee's future?
Well, a lot of the same, but I think one of the differences is I would really like to see a future where 90% of our community has absolute trust, confidence, and support of our government. It's a tall task. I'm thinking back to probably early 80s where you could leave your car unlocked, your house unlocked, and if the kids were playing out in a neighbor's house, everybody just kind of helped each other out, walked in, grandma made sandwiches, didn't know the kids. We're not going to get to that. It's a different society, but it sure is nice to just fantasize and dream. So,
Mr. Lehman, if you're elected mayor, what do you hope to achieve during the next 4 years?
well, I'd like to have these conversations with all layers of government. That's critical in my mind because you don't build confidence in government when you see federal and state government with such massive amounts of fraud happening. And, we could talk about the Met Council's rail line where the thing is, $1 billion over budget. They don't know where the money's come from. It recoups maybe 20% of its operating cost. If this was business, it would be out of business like tomorrow. You can't have $100 million fly out of the airport for daycare fraud, $250 million of Feed the Future fraud. Now you see a federal level billions of dollars of unemployment fraud, and we as taxpayers look at this and go, gee, we're supposed to have trust and confidence in these people? Absolutely, we can't. We've got to build that trust and confidence, and the only people that are going to do that are the voters by holding these people accountable and making them fix their errors.
Mayor Mars, if you're reelected, what do you hope to achieve during the next 4 years?
Keep the strong momentum going, right? We have a lot going for us here in Shakopee. We are very fortunate. I always talk about I grew up on the Iron Range. Those communities are dying. They're consolidating, they're merging, they have white elephant buildings, they're losing major employers. I like Shakopee. I think we have a lot going on. Employers want to come here and build. People want to come here and live here. Why do they want to do that? Low taxes, great school districts, great parks, good government, great little downtown, opportunities. I think that's the Shakopee that I want to have continue, and I want to lead the way.
Mayor Mars, what do you see as the one thing that sets you apart in this race more than anything else?
From my opponent?
Yes.
I've worked with my opponent the last 7 years. I've known him for a long time. I think what sets me apart is I'm the positive face of Shakopee. I like getting out with the people. I go to events. I talk to people all the time. I also build relationships. And maybe at times we don't see eye to eye, but building long-term relationships is vitally important in the role as mayor in any community. I think that certainly sets me apart. I also think on some critical issues in our community that my opponent has voted no in some of the best things that have happened in Shakopee in the last 20 years.
Mr. Lehman, what do you believe sets you apart in this race from your opponent?
Well, I think that the best three examples of what sets us apart would probably be the attempted hostile takeover of the Shakopee utilities, the disregard for Scott County's concern with the transportation piece of Canterbury's TIF at the beginning of the process. They asked to meet with us and it was ignored. And the latest one would be the annexation agreement with Jackson Township, where the negotiations and discussions in that annexation agreement were viewed differently and understood differently by the township than what the actual legal document allows. There's a loophole in there for the city to be able to annex 250 acres a year, whether it's developable or whether there's development coming or not. The township thought that the 250 would be the maximum for development per year, and instead of sitting down and working it out after the fact, they too were ignored, and it's unfortunate because you don't build partnerships that way, and it's unfortunate.
Mayor Mars, I see you'd like to comment.
Yeah, I can comment on a couple of these things. First of all, on our annexation agreement with Jackson Township, let's all be real and fair. Councilor Lehman sat at the table
Yes, I did.
for 16 months with the township and negotiated this long-term phasing agreement. We all agreed. We shook hands. We all signed the document. Every word was gone through. He stood at the table. Now it's, the township's rights or everything. I thought this was about landowner rights, which I thought he used to support.
And Mr. Lehman?
Thank you. If you want to ask the township elected board, they're going to agree with me. My understanding in them negotiations was the city would be able to annex up to 250 for development, not just because they want to do it and leave it sit empty and put utilities and services into it in hopes that development would come. That's very risky and sets you up for a situation like Rogers, Minnesota had. The issue really is there's a legal loophole in there that allows the city to do it this way. That was not the intention in our discussions. I didn't see that as the intention. All of the township didn't see that as the intention, but here we are. The city wants to go full tilt. Doesn't really matter who they squash.
And Mr. Mars?
Yeah, one more thing on the follow-up on the Shakopee Public Utilities. Well, let's be perfectly sure that the former manager of the utility broke a state law for over a year and a half. Those boards were complicit in that. We wanted, and we did, drive a change agent over at the local public utility, which is an arm-length organization. Today, the utility stands as a true partner with the community, stronger, better than ever. They changed some policies, and best ever in the last 25 years.
Thank you both. Our time is running out. Anyone whose questions have not been answered should ask the candidates this evening after the debate or contact their campaign offices. You can find more information about the candidates at the Chamber's website, shakopee.org, including the video interviews. Each candidate will now have 1 minute for their closing statement. We'll begin with Matt Lehman.
Thank you. Matt Lehman, I'm a candidate for mayor. My website is lehmanformayor.com. Facebook, you can find me at Matt Lehman for Shakopee. I have the experience, have the track record of putting the citizens, taxpayers first, and I would appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
And Mayor Mars.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chamber, for hosting tonight. Do appreciate it. My name is Bill Mars, and I am your mayor. In the last 7 years, we have been innovating, we have become more entertaining, and we are significantly more thriving than ever. We are growing smartly by adding to our tax base overall market value. Our tax rate has steadily declined for 7 years. Your community is stronger, more alive, and has much more positive energy than it did 7 years ago. Our historic downtown is thriving. As your mayor, I'd like to continue to be the positive, professional face of your community. I ask for your support. Vote Bill Mars on November 8th.
As we close this part of our discussion, please remember that the views expressed in tonight's debate are those of the candidates, not those of the Chamber and Visitors Board. The Chamber sponsors this event as a service to the community, and we've gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure the objectivity of this forum. The Chamber does not endorse any candidate. Instead, we seek to provide the information that you need to make informed choices when you vote. Thank you to the audience this evening and to River Valley Church for hosting our event. On behalf of the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau, thank you to both of the candidates for all of your years of service, and thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate your time and your service to our community.
Thank you.
Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th. Please remember to vote.